Welcome to another edition of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Dr. Monica Vermani. I'll tell you all about Dr. Vermani in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is that show that deals with what's often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the commitment we exert toward others. And when you do it from a leadership position, you do it to bring people together for common cause. And so I welcome you to Grace Under Pressure. Welcome, Dr. Monica Vermani.
Thank you very much, John, for having me.
Great. I want to tell folks all about you. You are a clinical psychologist, one of Canada's highest ratings. You're also a public speaker, teacher, and author. And you focus on multifaceted treatment, both adolescents and adults suffering from trauma and abuse, anxiety, substance addictions, and so many other more. So you have a brand new book out called, A Deeper Wellness. And we're going to talk about that today. Thank you for showing it. So I want to jump in. Dr. Vermani, Monica, depression is, mental health is a top of mind topic now, probably exacerbated its awareness during the pandemic. So you cite some statistics that a depressed employee misses an average of a month of work a year, which is pretty significant. So what's going on here? Is it more or just more reported? What do you see from your practice?
Post-pandemic, I'm finding more and more people having more symptoms of mood, anxiety, and trauma just bubble up to the surface. You know, we're all human beings. We're all perfect and a work in progress. And I think it's important for us to recognize that symptoms have its place in your life. All human behavior has a purpose, and all human symptoms have a purpose. To me, the suffering and the symptoms are a catalyst for change. They bring about change, and the pause from the pandemic forced us to kind of see things maybe that we were overworking through or pushing aside or being too busy and distracted to see. So when you start having symptoms exacerbate and get worse and worse, it's your way of taking control and going outside of yourself for help. And so to me, those symptoms of depression or anxiety or stress that we feel burnout is coming about, or we are feeling overwhelmed and not able to manage, it's nice to pause and reflect and say, okay, what's the purpose of my symptom right now? How do I take control? And we do the best we can with what we know. With our limited knowledge, we can only do so much. It's nice to go outside of ourselves to professionals or seek resources or go to experts out there who can help us guide ourselves to be a higher, better version of ourselves.
Thank you. You know, I know something about mental health. My daughter is a clinical social worker. My wife has worked in the area of depression. But I've never heard anyone say that symptoms of depression are an impetus for change. So that is a very optimistic look at things. How did you come about that mindset, Dr. Monica?
So, you know, I started my career working in correctional facilities. And so when I was younger, I thought if I can work all the extreme populations, I can do everything in the middle. And that worked for me in my favor. And, you know, the more I work with patients, and I've been fortunate enough to be working in the field since I was a teen. And so, you know, my wide array of experience in correctional facilities, you know, with abused women and children, with people with mood and anxiety disorders, brain and spinal cord injury, families with anxiety, military, 9/11. The one thing I see in common is everybody has symptoms, whether the range of symptoms might vary, but all symptoms are catalysts for change. If we ignore them, they just get louder and louder and louder until you are forced to change. But the change could be seeking help. The change could be changing and modifying your life, getting rid of something or adding more to your plate that, you know, encompasses self-care and physio or massage or taking care of yourself or taking that lunch break away from your desk. We need to learn how to bring healthy changes to our life. And sometimes the only step to change comes from suffering, and symptoms make us suffer, right? The first line of treatment, we go to our family doctor. And, you know, you're usually complaining about the physiological symptoms that are loud, but most physiological symptoms are based by psychological, you know, concerns and symptoms that we've ignored.
That's a wonderful and optimistic look at what bothers us most, shall we say. So Now, the cliche is that there's a stigma to acknowledging mental health. I wish it weren't, but it's still there. But you focus on, at least the focus on our interview, is focus on the workplace. So, if I'm a boss, what should I be looking for in my people if I sense something is askew? What do you tell us, Dr. Monica? So.
I think it's important for us to start recognizing, again, in the workplace, a 24-hour day, a typical healthy, balanced life would be 8 hours work, 8 hours play, 8 hours sleep. And that's your 24.
Oh, I always get that. There's no problem.
You're excellent. But 1/3 of our day is at work. And so the workplace is a place that is a good, population and sample size for us to see, what does my day-to-day look like? When you're in pain, you spill over onto others. And so when we talk about mental health and depression being higher today, yes, depression's gone higher. But one reason why it's also gone higher is many people are pushing through symptoms of mental health versus actually addressing it. So when you say the stigma is, I can deal with this. Like, this is my mind. This is me. If you had a broken leg, do you hobble and wobble yourself to work every day? No, you go and get it treated so that you can walk efficiently at one point and treat it. Same with mental health. We need to see it the same way. Just because you're able to function or push through distress does not mean it's healthy. And many of us ignore symptoms thinking this is a sign of weakness, or I can push through, or this is a moment in time and the moment will pass. Yes, at times it's a moment in time and the moment will pass, but many of us have stressful lives for a prolonged period of time, which exacerbates mental health concerns of anxiety, depression, self-doubt, low self-esteem, burnout. And so generalized anxiety is chronic worry about real life concerns. Social anxiety is about, fear of scrutiny, judgment, criticism by people. These two disorders have heightened at work, and our employers are a place that you can see the spillage. When you're in pain, you spill over onto others. You can see interpersonal conflict. You can see lack of concentration, decision-making issues, changes in fatigue levels, restlessness, cutting people off, overeating, undereating. You can see fatigue in people nowadays. That workplaces are a lot of a good environment to start helping people do preventative care, bring in wellness, because there's loss of productivity. There's more short-term and long-term disability, and people going on leaves or taking absent days because they're physically not well due to mental health concerns. And so being mental is big today.
Okay. Your book provides therapies and action steps and things like that. And part of it is, if we have a colleague or perhaps a direct report, you say there's 3 things we don't do. So tell us the don'ts.
So we don't actually acknowledge, many times we don't see that we're human. To be human is to err. To be human is also to realize that you're perfect and a work in progress. We don't see sometimes our defense mechanisms or the ways that we overcompensate for our symptoms. Some of us push through, some of us take a Tylenol or a painkiller to take the edge off, or we use alcohol to take the edge off at the end of the day of a stressful day, versus looking at, why is my day-to-day life so stressful that I need something to take the edge off? And so we don't always acknowledge our symptoms as concerning and significant. We also don't sometimes see other people in our circle as suffering because they're able to manage day to day. Many people are overachievers that have severe depression because they're not living their life authentically. They're living their life pushing through and trying to fit this box. The quote I love to live by, John, is being well adjusted to a sick society is unhealthy. And we promote our children to fit this rat race of a society that sometimes burns us out, that sometimes keeps us in competitions, that sometimes doesn't give us the permission or the time to ask for help or seek the help we need because of time, limitations or childcare issues. We feel very alone in our suffering in today's world, and we deny ourselves that it's a human journey, that we can learn from one another. When I see somebody lesser than me, I'm like, I grew from there. When I see somebody better, I can acquire the skill and become it. I try to stay positive, but the truth is, genetics and mood and anxiety can come from just chemistry issues, ADD and attention issues. A lot of people with addictions with technology present as ADD, but many times they don't have it, but they're starting to mimic symptoms of it. It is good for us to treat our symptoms and not just push them aside thinking this is who I am, or this is where I came from, or this is how my mom was, and so I'm modeling the same behavior, and it's okay, she survived, I will too. Many of us don't give significance to things that can actually improve our life. I always tell patients, if I had a magic wand that can take away your problems, where would you like life to go? It's nice to take you from where you are to where you want to go. This gap are symptoms, anxiety, symptoms that are physiological, or negative thoughts racing in your head, or negative behaviors and habits. But this gap, we all should be trying to minimize in order to have a good quality of life.
You raised something interesting there, and I like the magic wand. How often do you say, when you pose that question, if you have the magic wand and take it away, where do you want to be, or what do you want to do? Do you get an answer? Do they know what they want? So
what I start with is a table with 3 legs. The first step to treatment anywhere for anybody, and we all are perfect and a work in progress, so it doesn't matter what level or how much work you've done on yourself. We all can do fine tuning to improve ourselves. And I always tell people, you can put any problem in life on a table and it is going to manifest in your life in 3 distinct ways. Anxiety, depression, marital problems, social struggles, work struggles, imposter syndrome, self-esteem issues, body image, cancer, diabetes, money, anything you put here is going to show up in 3 ways. First, through physical or physiological symptoms, headaches, muscle aches, abdominal distress, constipation, diarrhea, heart palpitations, crying, sensitivity, irritability, fatigue, panic attacks, the list goes on. Second way is negative thoughts. 0 to 10, you're not born in that world. You're born in a household. The way mom and dad love is love. The way mom and dad fight is conflict resolution. We learn a lot from our upbringing, and we repeat thought patterns of hard work doesn't kill me. I need to push through mental health. I need to be productive. I can't be lazy. And then as you grow, life is just a series of experiences until you judge your experiences as positive or negative. So these are negative thoughts of me, the world, capabilities, relationships, success, concepts. And then behavioral are lifestyle habits: eating too much, eating too little, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, alcohol and drugs. None of these guys, we do it here. Avoidance, denial, procrastination, staying in lifestyle habits that are not for our highest and best. So the 3 of these keep your problems standing. When I oftentimes do the life tasks of, if I had a magic wand and I can take away all your problems, what would life look like in social works, intimacy, self-care, spirituality? Where you are to where you go is easy for many people, because where they want to go is nothing magnificent. It's really going somewhere where these are not impacting their day-to-day functioning. People want suffering relief. They want to be able to sleep properly at night. They want to reduce the rumination. They want to be able to go to work with vigor and enjoyment and enthusiasm and thrive versus just survive every day.
Wonderful. And that's a lecturette, and I love it. It's so insightful. So thank you for that thing. So I want to distinguish. You have used the term pushing through several times. So, and many people, especially high achievers, are fond of saying, I will make this happen and I work hard. What is the difference between working hard and pushing through?
So, working hard, in my opinion, pushing through is enduring something with distress, meaning it's not a comfortable state for mind, body, or soul. And when it comes down to working hard, it should be for a period of time, like fight, flight, or freeze. Like that fight or flight, if a bear shows up, I should be kicking into action, but then at some point I got to come back to baseline. And so pushing through for many people is they might negotiate with themselves to say, I got this project to do. I just have a lot to juggle until I finish Mother's Day and all these other things I've added to my plate. You should be able to kick into gear, but many of us are kicking into gear and staying there for a prolonged period of time. And that's where we're pushing through. We're pushing through because we're not giving ourselves the rest to come back to baseline, to recover, replenish, and renew ourselves to actually be able to manage life in a successful manner where we can come back to a state of joy. So many times We all suck it up, if you want to call it. We all push through, a heavy period around Christmas or a heavy period around deadlines, month end, year end, whatever you want to call it. Or Mother's Day, I'm going to juggle a little bit more on my plate, whatever. We all should be able to push through, but with this time limitation of I'm going to come back to baseline tomorrow, or I'm going to come back to baseline in a week. If you don't give yourself that timeline deadline, it turns into a lifestyle that you're pushing through because your body is not able to manage it. Stress is when your activity level, physical or mental, surpasses your energy levels. This here in the middle is stress. And so you have two options: bring down activity, which is mental or physical, or bring up energy levels. There's 4 sources of energy, and it goes back to our basics: the food we eat. Are we eating to bring ourselves to a normal place? Are we spiking it with caffeine and sugar and depressants like alcohol, drugs? And then we got sleeping. Are we sleeping enough? Are we prioritizing it? And are we sleeping with a quality of sleep that I feel renewed and refreshed in the morning? Third one is exercise and breathing. When we are growing up, we go from babies who were breathing properly from our belly to short and shallow breaths. How do we go back to a state of being relaxed and giving ourselves enough oxygen to just relax and breathe? And so exercise and breathing forces you to breathe properly again. And then the fourth one is a calm state of mind. Are you dealing with things, including taking things off your plate? As you grow up, we add on more roles, but we don't necessarily take out some roles in order to replace new ones.
That leads me to, what is the power of saying no?
So no is about self-care. I would say don't give from an empty well, give from your overflow. And many of us are pushing through giving from an empty well, not from a reserve where we're in overflow. Saying no is about self-care. Saying no is about being a VIP in your life, a very important person where you put yourself first, because I'm no good to others until I take care of me. When you're in pain, you spill over onto others in symptoms and suffering. But when you're in a place of health, there's also a ripple effect that motivates people, that models healthy behavior, that also, allows your environment to be productive, like workplaces or home life to be happier and with more joy and creativity and play. So realizing that saying no is about me putting myself in the equation of my own life. We are literally taking a breath into the world alone, and we're taking a breath out of the world alone. It's an alone journey amongst a collective. We need to prioritize our own health in the journey of our own lives. Saying no is about you learning to set boundaries, to prioritize and self-love and self-care so that you can give the loved ones around you that same quality of life.
Right. How can I be a friend, a good friend to someone, perhaps a colleague, who is suffering from anxiety or depression? What can I do?
So when it comes down to people who are suffering with anxiety and depression, the first step to treatment is awareness. I have a lot of patients that I see that motivate their loved ones by showing modeled behavior of how they're doing better. I've had partners say that my husband's not working on himself or my wife's not working on herself. And I said, well, you be that steady stone. You work on yourself, and that person's going to look at you with, you're doing something that's right. Let me join that boat. Let me try to motivate myself by looking at you. And as friends and colleagues, share. We're here in a collective journey, teaching and learning from each other. Don't feel embarrassed to share what's working for you for somebody that you can see is struggling with the same symptom. Learn to talk about your symptoms. What we realize is that we're a human journey with human problems, and many of us just don't share. But once you start sharing, you realize how many other people are going through the same insecurities, how many other people are being hard on themselves, not feeling good enough, not feeling adequate, or suffering with mood and anxiety that hasn't been treated because they don't know where to go. I find word of mouth, we talk to one another, and we actually start being more authentic and genuine with one another. And if you have somebody in need, the best thing you can ever do is pay it forward by suggesting people that you see for therapy or encouraging them to work on themselves because they matter in the equation of their lives. And also bringing in perspective to just hold in love and compassion. John, most of us don't feel seen, heard, and valued, including at workplaces, in family units. We're not seen, heard, and valued. And so when somebody's struggling, give them a space compassionately to see them, hear them, and value them, but then also take an actionable step to provide them with resources or help so they can go beyond themselves to be a better version of them.
Right. Well, that's all good. And I think one of the things that I explore in my work is the concept of grace, but which it comes down to connection to one another. So how do we be that friend without preaching? So.
Well, I think that goes back to the seen, heard, and valued, right? Like learning to help somebody. I think when you build a good rapport with somebody, it's not about preaching. It's about having a conversation with someone like, how can I be of help? Asking, even as partners, parents, friends, colleagues, or siblings or children, ask, how can I be of help? When you see someone's not doing well, I can notice, I see you, you're not doing well. I notice these symptoms. Are you doing okay? Are you managing? And how can I be of help? That's not preaching, that's offering something that the other person might be uncomfortable to receive. But that's also about us providing a safe network and caring and kindness. Now, sometimes we don't have time. So the person who's depressed, who gets unnoticed and pushes through oftentimes, they might look on the surface doing really well, but we don't notice sometimes on a day-to-day basis, they are struggling. They might be crying themselves to sleep. They might be ruminating in bed and not able to shut their eyes and put themselves to rest. Or they might be not being able to eat properly or sleep or engage with people and are avoiding people. It's nice for us to be a little bit healthier in our own lives so that we can also be present enough to notice other people's lives. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And now, so if I'm a boss listening to what you're saying and I'm in agreement and I want to help my employees,
right?
What kind of professional resources can I steer my company toward or offer? What do you recommend, Dr. Monica?
So one thing I've noticed in corporate wellness today is like a lot of managers become managers, not necessarily because they're given the tools to be good managers, but because they have longevity and they've just been pushed up the ladder.
Oh, you noticed that.
I noticed that. So it's nice for companies and corporations to start looking objectively, like we should be providing our staff at higher levels the tools so they can build rapport and be present for their employees, so that our environment's not as toxic and a little bit healthier, and then once they have some tools and training, maybe by professionals like me who train the trainers and training leadership to be more effective in corporate, rapport building, ask your employees, what do they need? Bring them into the equation instead of telling them what to do. Instead of power over, have power with people. There's no substitute for creating an environment that is playful and fun. Do your team meetings and learn to ask each other, what they had for dinner on the weekend. Like I have an executive that struggled with his date night ideas. And I said, tomorrow morning when you have that team meeting, why don't you start off by asking your team, hey, anybody have any great restaurants they've tried? And they might be able to give you ideas. And the funny thing is, he said that exercise of asking made everybody bring up such creative ideas that every third meeting now we talk about any new restaurants, any new activities. And it's a way to bond, but it's also a way to creatively just bring in joy. And people have been writing down ideas and we take minutes on it now. And we have this Google share where we're putting in ideas of things we've seen in the city. It fosters health outside of work. Review your employee benefits, understand it as a manager so that when somebody's struggling, you can say, hey, I'd like to be of help. And these are some of the things our company offers. EAP many times is time limited or they don't have a lot of sessions with. Well, educate them on how to start with EAP and to ask for the right resources to continue their journey in health and well-being. Consider also enhancing employee benefits by bringing in speakers that are clinicians like myself who do mood, anxiety, treatment as well as diagnosis, and allow us to explain what symptoms are and what are the right places to get the help. One reason why people don't use benefits, they don't know necessarily what to ask for. They don't know what professionals are really going to, help, and what's the difference between psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, physiotherapists, OTs. These are overwhelming, and Dr. Google on the internet is not going to help. It is important for us to provide supports in an effective manner, not to overwhelm them like a menu with too many options, but to also show them the baby steps that they can take from a point of need to start with us.
One of the things that you're very familiar with is the concept of psychological safety, which talks about the work environment. And I would say it's where people are heard and valued. So what is a tip for someone to, if you see a colleague struggling with a mental health issue or whatever, how can you make it safe for them to speak or feel valued? Any tips on that, Dr. Monica?
Yeah, communication's key. And I'll say one thing, a lot of people hesitate to communicate with somebody they notice is not doing well because they don't want to offend or hurt or get yelled at. And the truth is, we got to be the change we want to see in the world. Do unto others as you want done to you. If you feel that if I wasn't in a good space, I would love you to share that with me so that I have insight to work on it. And so I've learned as a psychologist to share with a lot of people, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That is actually the way that people will receive what you're saying. It's about showing care and compassion and concern versus saying, you look like a mess every day. There's always a nice way to say, I've noticed a change in your demeanor and energy levels. Are you doing okay? How can I be of help? Do you want to talk about it? There's always a nice way to bring up even concerns that you're having with your employees or with your family members that you're frustrated with or you're irritated by or you feel dismissed by or unheard or not getting the help or feeling taken advantage of. Instead of being angry, irritated, let's learn to look at it's not what I'm saying to them. It's going to be how I say it that helps them hear, see, and value what I'm bringing up to them. And so paying attention to ourselves to pause, how do I say things and how can I make it better?
How I say things leads us to our final question because we're racing along here and I can keep going, but I know you have a busy practice to get back to. And I ask every guest a story about grace. Do you have something that you'd like to share with us, Dr. Monica?
Yes, grace to me is like beautiful moment where it just kind of falls into your silence and falls into your life. And it's you're not looking for it. It just kind of shows up and, it's an undeserved favor in some ways. It's like a mentor or a colleague or a loved one just showing up and going above and beyond for you. So in my life, I have to thank the person who got me on the line of psychology. I was working at a women's prison back in the day as a young person, and I had finished my undergrad and I was doing an abused women and children's counselor advocate program, and I had an internship at a women's prison, and one of the psychologists would give me a lot of extra work, and I was like, why am I always getting more work? And he said, would you like to work on my private practice? You're quite bright. And so then I started working on his private practice, and he said to me, you need to go back to school and get your master's and your PhD and become me. You're very talented with people. And by him believing in me, it opened up something in me to believe in myself. And so that to me was a moment of grace where my parents might have not been as educated or as knowledgeable about the field to see skills that I possessed that I could probably bring out there to the world. But this mentor, who was my boss, took time, attention, and took a moment to speak to me, to show me a mirror of who I could become. And here I am today doing the work that I was meant to do from a very young age and thriving in it and very happy in it because it is my authentic being. But that to me was a moment of grace where when we open ourselves up to hearing, seeing, and being valued by people even, learn to not dismiss people's compliments of you, dismiss people's acknowledgement of your efforts and work. Nobody owes you anything, but when somebody takes time and attention to show you a mirror of how remarkable or amazing you are, listen to it, pay attention to it, and try to take it in, and that's grace to me. When you actually are able to slow down and see it, absorb it, and take action to run with it.
What a powerful story about grace. And I love how you tied all these threads together and blossomed into the life that you lead and share with so many others. Dr. Monica Vermani, how can people find you? So
you can find me on my website, drmonicavermani.com. My book, A Deeper Wellness, is on Amazon as well as on my website. You can find the link for that. It's also in an audiobook for people who have chronic pain or are struggling and just want to have a book that they listen to instead of write and read. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. There's tons of mental health tips I provide. We're in a place of need, and so let's try to take care of ourselves so that we can create that ripple effect to make the world a better place too.
you are a terrific guest, and I can believe a brilliant therapist and a caring and loving person. So thank you for sharing your story with us today, and look for Deeper Wellness. It's a good book. With that, we will go out.